here at our festival's fourth interview we're doing this year. Our festival is called the History International Film Festival Austria. We have films about history and with historical structures, historical topics from all around the world. And today we have with something special with us. Jack Pettitt is here with us. He is creating a, let's say, series of history films about various topics. He submitted a few of them to our festival. We are very glad to have them and you with us, Jack. Thanks for joining our festival, also for an interview. We are happy to have you here, and maybe we can start by in the way that you introduce yourself a little and tell us what films did you submit to our festival.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, firstly, thank you for having me on, and it's a pleasure to be here and represent history in its entirety. So, the films that I submitted were three of them. We've got first one was Pets at War. Then we had Animals in Conflict, and then Beanbenders. And those are the three that we submitted. I think I'll start more with the more sad, sombre story, and that was, of course, Pets at War. Now, that film was quite a difficult one to approach because obviously it's such a sad story that it's centered around, and that was, of course, what some people call the Pet Holocaust of 1939 that happened in England, in London, just on the eve of war. And I suppose the essence that we wanted to capture there was that this was a real event, and it kind of runs parallel with the events of the Second World War, but yet it's not a well-known story. And so therefore, what we really wanted to do in that episode is sort of create this world and document a series of stories, I suppose, that then come from that and are causes of that, consequences of that. And yeah, by the end, we were really happy with what we created. I suppose what connects these three films together is the idea of it being less well-known history, and that was the vision from the start. And if you look at our that series, it's called sort of Hidden Histories, and that's the idea that it's very unknown stories that perhaps deserve that recognition, especially in the 21st century. Moving on to another film that we submitted, and that was I'll stay with the themes of animals, and that was Animals in Conflict, and that was the goal there was to document the use of two particular animals, man's best friend, otherwise known as dogs, and then of course horses throughout history, because I think we forget that, you know, wars aren't just fought by humans, and you know, dogs and horses, and you know, way back to the Romans, the Egyptian era, that, you know, other animals were enlisted too, you know. So that was really eye opening to see the how it's developed, but also how it hasn't really changed as well. There's lots of parts of continuity that were very interesting to us, like the Romans, for example, using dogs because they are scary. You know, that still happens today, of course, with the Belgian Malinois that the army uses in its regiments. When we approach this film, I definitely am not, or was not, an expert in this era. So we had help from three very renowned authors and historians. We had one, Simon, who was an expert in the use of horses throughout warfare. And then we had a couple, Claire Campbell and Christy Campbell, and Claire had actually written a book called Bonzo's War, and that was partly linked to the Pet Holocaust. So there's a kind of overlap between those two films in terms of the locations that we maybe visit, but also some of the stories that we tell. And then her husband, a very famous, renowned journalist called Christy Campbell, and he's done a lot of work with you know, in all realms of history, but he certainly had a lot more knowledge to offer. And then, of course, you can see Claire and Christy as talking heads, as interviewees in both films, which was awesome. Not to forget one big part of our Animals in Conflict film, and that is, of course, where we got special access, where the public are not allowed to go, and that is, of course, the Ministry of Defence, British Army Animal Defence Training Regiment in Melton Mowbray. Again, not many people know it's there. Melton Mowbray in England is kind of near Leicester, and it's known for many things, but probably the most well known is its pies, pork pies. So it's quite hidden off the beaten track, and we were really fortunate to get, you know, to be allowed onto that site and interview a whole host of different army personnel, both who are currently serving and of civilians that help out on the base. And we spent 3 days there. Actually, we spent 3 whole days filming at the Animal Defence Training Regiment, and that included a host of things from watching a dog find or sniff some dog Kong, as they call it, like a dog toy, and that was practicing sniffer dogs to which would then go on to maybe locate bombs. We then had the opportunity to watch the farriers at work, and those are the men and women who sort of look after horses and work with their horseshoes, and then right down to the very interesting surgery we managed to watch. We watched a horse get a surgery just to have a look at one of its joints. That was really awesome. The third film that we introduced, or we submitted to the History International Film Festival Austria, was Beambenders. The title of the film is actually a nod and a sort of tip the hat to an author that wrote a book quite a while ago now, called Beambenders. And I didn't necessarily at first want to call it that, because I didn't really want to copy someone else's idea, but I really felt that title sort of captured the essence of the story that was there, and it's quite intriguing. What do you mean beam benders? People that sort of bend beams. And I actually found out about that story probably about 2 years before we ended up filming it, and that was at it was at a display. Actually, it was at an exhibition that I was giving a lecture at in St Albans, and I don't know how it came up. I think we were talking about sort of local history, and it turned out that one of the bases that we used was very local to where I was giving this lecture, and me and this gentleman were conversing about this amazing story, and that really stuck with me. That story really stuck with me, and I thought, wow, this is something that I don't know about, and it played such a key role in Britain winning the war essentially, and so that is made up of quite a few locations, that film, and it basically documents the struggle that we see in World War II between measure and countermeasure. Each side trying to get one up on the other to effectively win or look like they're winning the war. So yeah, I mean, all three were, I suppose, a labour of love, and I learned an incredible amount through the process in terms of history. I couldn't have done it on my own. Although I wrote and narrated and presented each film, I had a very, very strong, reliable team around me. Jonathan Lindsay, the one of the directors and owner of Linear Productions, was just incredible. And then we've got Thomas Desmond, who, almost like my sidekick. He's, just such an amazing human being. They both are, and that was the core team really. Obviously, we had many others help out and what have you, but yeah, I think really, really enjoyed it. And I suppose the rationale, not only to share history um, through a way that I think is important, that's quite informative. I think fictional history is can be awesome in generating interest in that topic, but rather I think the documentary, or rather the short form documentary, um, is very powerful. And I suppose a reason why I went down that route is because, by heart, I'm a teacher in a school. And I found, especially over the last, 10 years, that short form content has become king. And you can see that today through TikTok, social media, all of these different platforms where, you capture someone's attention for a very short amount of time and then they move on. And so, you know, I ended up, I actually did a master's and MA in education, and part of my thesis was looking at this idea of short form content in terms of a learning setting. And some of the statistics is quite outstanding in the sense that young people have a very very short attention span, and I mean that's not news to anyone, but um, I suppose when you look at the market and when you look at things like YouTube or other learning platforms, that they capitalize on this, and the fact that they make these short form content documentary um, is something that we kind of wanted to do, but we wanted to do it in a way that was, I suppose, in our own way, and use different parts of cinematography and different shots, etc., to try and get across a story that we, or stories rather, that we felt were awesome and worth telling, I suppose.
So your your short documentaries, uh, do you consider using them directly for educational purposes as well?
100%, yeah, absolutely. In England, there's I suppose the curriculum in which teachers deliver is normally set by the government, but there's always leeway and creativity that you can take from that national curriculum, and you can mold in your own way, whether that be through the particular area in which you teach, or the school that you're in. But yeah, 100%. Like there's been many opportunities in the curriculum that I teach in history um, to show those films, and I suppose it adds another layer, to the meaning that your history teacher, the person that's standing up in front of you talking about history, um, actually does it as well. So it's the practice of I suppose history in action. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of opportunities. I mean, within our World War II sort of curriculum that we teach with our year nine, so they're about 13, 14 years old. We show both the pets at war and animals in conflict. And then, of course, beam benders, we look at that as an extension of our sort of local study, because it's quite connected to sort of local areas to where I am. So yeah, there's always opportunities in the curriculum. But of course, it's also enriching as well. It's not just learning about history because the curriculum says we have to, but it's enriching students, I suppose, history curriculum and history knowledge through stories. And that's the purpose of history, right? If you look at the word history, it comes from a Greek historia, which is obviously to inquire. So yeah, it's always fascinating to marry history and film with learning.
And as you said, there's a whole team behind these productions, not just you. Can you tell us more about your team members, how you met, and what's the way that you work together?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm not a one man band at all. I'm not a one man band. There are, of course, a whole host of people that work alongside me. So yeah, there's myself, who mainly writes, researches, and presents the content. Um, I suppose we've got our in-house resident historian, we call him, and that's Mr. Paul Fletcher, and he does a lot of research as well behind the scenes, and him and I sort of work together to ensure that we choose the correct history. but also choose how we decide to tell that story. So I suppose that's the more writing side. On the production side, you've got Jonathan Lindsay, who's the director of Linear Productions and director of photography, incredible cameraman. Um, John is a guy that you want. I can't. I have these visions. Yeah, I have these crazy visions, and I say, well, I want this, I want this, I want this, and John just makes it happen. And you always have to have someone in your team that that is very methodical, to the point, is very, maps things out in his head, knows what he's doing, and of course can deliver. Then we've got another director, Thomas Desmond. He is awesome. He sound king. He's in charge of sound on location, animation king as well. He does all the animations for us, and he is, yeah, like I said, my sidekick. He again, makes things happen. And then I suppose we've got a whole host of people that are, when it comes to production, get involved on the day. Have lots of different roles, from gaffer to AD to drone pilot to all sorts.
So basically, you come up with an idea of a documentary that would be interesting. You research it, write it, and then come to your team and you produce it. May we ask, are you doing this just for the sake of it, for your teaching purposes, or possibly also interesting for other filmmaking viewers? Are you submitting these to TV channels, or how do you get them out to a wider public aside from your YouTube channel?
So I think the idea was born about end of 2018, where the motivation behind it was, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if I could make history come to life in my classroom? And that was I suppose, the primary motive. And then we started thinking of some ideas, and we done series 1, which is about William and him securing his kingdom, sort of William the Conqueror coming over to England. He's won the Battle of Hastings, but it doesn't mean that he's conquered the country, that kind of thing. And we look at different ways in which William secures England under his reign. And that was written very much in mind that it follows a particular specification within the curriculum. And then from, I suppose, very early days, we were very lucky to, I suppose, work with and have our films on History Hit, which is Dan Snow's sort of, big history channel online. And the deal there was, I don't want to put it behind a paywall, because I want it to be, open access to everyone. And then from there, I suppose it just grew, and I suppose we did it. We did it with the love of history first, and then obviously coupled with the love of filming and the love of cinematography. And then we were very lucky to get a commission from History Hit to produce a second series from what they had already had on their site, and that was when Untold Weapons of War was born, and that sort of sits behind sort of our series of hidden histories, and then from there. So I suppose the first few years were mainly producing content for this distributor and this online platform, and they were, I felt, obviously, the audience that History Hit have are, can far surpass the audience if we were to start up a YouTube channel. But we thought, let's give it a go and let's start a YouTube channel, and it's chugging away in the background, and it's doing relatively well. And we've got people, a small community that comment on lots of videos and sending questions, which is awesome. I suppose from one of the videos, we've actually had quite a few private commissions as well, which obviously aren't anywhere online or on channels, and they've kind of taken precedent over the last couple of years, and they've been more heavyweight, sort of hour and a half documentaries about a very particular part of history that someone wants for their, for their family, or to honor the site in which they live. So yeah,
Interesting as well. But those are private productions, not for the public.
yeah,
Okay, I see. Yeah, interesting how you can practically self-finance those projects and not rely on government funding, as it seems.
yeah. I mean, the first series was all self-funded. The second series, we were able to secure minimal to cover base costs, I suppose. But like I said earlier, the team, there's three of us really, and Jonathan Lindsay and Tom Desmond, and in particular, the company Linear Productions, they have, uh, all the kit fit for a king, so we are very lucky that we have, quality cameras, quality sound equipment, quality lights, um, and knowledge, I suppose, of filming and cinematography to be able to actually put an idea that I have in my head to practice, and hopefully it looks good. Hopefully, the finished product is one that I'm certainly proud of.
As you have all the reason to be, because it looks very much professional.
Oh, thank you. We do try. Yeah.
Succeed, I think.
Thank you.
So thank you, Jack. I hope that everybody that has heard our interview now will be curious and go on to proceed to your YouTube channel after watching, of course, the films on our festival site as well, and gives you all their thumbs up and follows that you need nowadays.
Yeah.
We will link, of course, everything in our descriptions here and on the website and on social media and so on. And we hope that you get a huge success with your videos in the future, because we think it's the most important thing to connect history and education and make it in a way that works in the internet as well. So I think you will really much on the path to the future here.
And also to have the endurance to keep doing it for years.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, it's a real pleasure to be, invited and participate in the interview. And like I said, all the best. And I hope people enjoy, History International Film Festival Austria.